Codependency is a term often discussed in the realm of relationships and emotional health. But what does it truly mean? To understand codependency, it's essential to distinguish it from healthy interdependence, a dynamic that involves mutual support, respect, and individuality. In a healthy relationship, both partners are capable of standing on their own, yet choose to share their lives, emotions, and challenges together. They rely on each other not because they must, but because they want to, maintaining a careful balance between togetherness and independence. Codependency, however, is characterized by a persistent, unhealthy reliance on another person for emotional or self-esteem needs. Rather than complementing each other, one becomes almost entirely consumed with pleasing, supporting, or rescuing the other, often at the expense of their own needs and well-being. The boundaries between self and other become blurred. Instead of, I rely on you and you rely on me, it is, I am only okay if you are okay. This shift from mutual support to one-sided caretaking or enabling behaviors forms the bedrock of codependent relationships. The roots of codependency often reach deep into our formative years. Many individuals who struggle with codependent tendencies grew up in environments where love and approval were conditional. Perhaps they were tasked with managing the emotions or well-being of a parent, learning to anticipate needs at the expense of their own desires. Other times, entire families can become locked in patterns of dysfunction, where emotional suppression, substance abuse, or trauma lead children to take on adult responsibilities far too soon. These lessons become templates for future relationships, ingrained with the belief that self-worth is earned through caretaking or sacrifice. Societal pressures further complicate the landscape. Traditional roles often glorify self-sacrifice, pleasing others, and suppressing needs to avoid conflict or disappointment. The idea that love must be proven through endless giving and accommodation is woven into stories, media, and expectations, reinforcing the notion that worth is tied to how much one can do for others. Real-life examples of codependent behaviors abound. Consider a partner who repeatedly neglects their own needs to avoid upsetting a spouse, apologizing for things outside their control, or the friend who rearranges their entire life around someone else's crises, never asking for support themselves. There's the parent who lives vicariously through their child, deriving all self-worth from their child's achievements, losing sight of their own identity in the process. In each case, the codependent individual sacrifices their autonomy in service of another, often believing this dynamic is necessary for love or security. Recognizing codependency begins with awareness of its red flags. One of the most common is chronic people-pleasing, the compulsion to say yes when you want to say no, or to suppress your own emotions to maintain outward harmony. Excessive caretaking often follows, where one repeatedly takes responsibility for another's problems, sometimes to the point of enabling destructive behaviors. Difficulty setting boundaries is another hallmark. Codependent individuals struggle to assert their own limits, fearing rejection or conflict. Emotional reactivity surfaces when a codependent person feels responsible for another's mood or happiness, experiencing guilt or anxiety if they cannot fix things. Controlling behavior may also emerge, stemming from the belief that one must manage all aspects of their partner's life to avoid catastrophe. Underneath it all, low self-esteem persists, a sense that one is only as valuable as their ability to help or please others. Imagine Sarah, who finds herself constantly checking in on her boyfriend, rearranging her schedule to meet his needs while ignoring her own exhaustion. When he is upset, she feels inadequate, believing it is her job to make things right. Or John, who stays in a difficult friendship because he fears being alone, tolerating mistreatment and giving more than he ever receives. These stories embody how codependent patterns can quietly take hold, eroding self-worth over time. The impact of codependency extends to both people in the relationship, leaving lasting emotional scars. For the codependent individual, the constant pressure to manage another's well-being breeds anxiety, exhaustion, and often deep depression. There can be a pervasive sense of emptiness, masked by busyness and caretaking. Resentment also builds, as self-sacrifice gives way to frustration and a feeling of being taken for granted. For the other person, codependency can foster dependency, entitlement, or even enable self-destructive habits. The absence of boundaries means one partner takes ever more, while the other has less and less to give. Growth, both personal and as a couple, often stalls, stifled by fear of conflict or change. Over time, the possibility for authentic connection and vulnerability diminishes, replaced by a cycle of unmet needs and silent expectations. Importantly, codependency blocks the path to self-discovery. Personal goals, hobbies, dreams, and friendships may be sidelined in favor of managing the needs of the relationship. This lack of space for individuality can lead to a persistent feeling that something is missing, even if the relationship appears functional on the surface. Breaking free from codependent patterns is both challenging and liberating, requiring a commitment to self-awareness. The first step is recognizing the cycle, acknowledging recurring thoughts like, "If they aren't happy, I've failed," or "My needs aren't as important as theirs." Examining these beliefs with compassion, rather than judgment, opens the door to profound change. Developing healthier boundaries is essential. This involves learning to say no without guilt, identifying your needs and desires, and expressing them openly. Boundaries are not walls, they are guidelines for how you wish to be treated and how much you can give without compromising your own emotional health. Communication becomes clearer and more authentic, allowing both individuals to show up as their true selves. Building self-esteem forms another cornerstone of recovery. Cultivating self-worth, independent of others' approval, through hobbies, friendships, creative expression, or quiet self-reflection, restores a crucial sense of identity. It's about finding fulfillment within, rather than through relentless caretaking. Addressing codependency often calls for professional support. Therapy provides a safe space to untangle the roots of unhealthy patterns, grieve losses, and learn practical tools for change. Group support, such as Codependence Anonymous, offers community and shared wisdom, reducing the isolation that often accompanies these struggles. Ultimately, the journey out of codependency leads to the possibility of truly healthy relationships, ones based on mutual respect, open communication, and balanced give and take. Instead of relying on another for happiness, both partners take responsibility for their own well-being, bringing their fullest selves to the relationship. Emotional intimacy flourishes when each person can be vulnerable and honest, knowing that disagreement or disappointment will not spell disaster. Developing these new patterns takes time and patience. A helpful strategy is to practice active listening, focusing on truly hearing your partner's feelings and perspectives without immediately taking on responsibility for solving their problems. Speak your truth kindly, even if it feels uncomfortable. Naming what you feel and need can be transformative. Prioritizing self-care is key. Carve out time for rest, hobbies, and connection with others outside the relationship. This nurtures the sense of individuality that is so often lost in codependent dynamics. Celebrate small wins. Every step toward voicing your needs or setting a boundary builds the foundation for lasting change. Healthy relationships thrive on a foundation of balance, where each person feels both held and free. Seek out partnerships and friendships where respect is mutual, empathy abounds, and space for individuality is honored. Misunderstandings and conflicts will still arise, but they become opportunities for deeper understanding, not sources of fear. Most importantly, embrace the journey of growth with hope. Healing from codependency is not about perfection, but about progress. Each act of self-advocacy, each moment of honest communication, brings you closer to the fulfilling, connected relationships you deserve. Know that help is available, and change is always possible. One step, one choice, one conversation at a time.